Hi, we're continuing in C.S. Lewis's readings from The Four Loves. In this section of Eros, he's talking about headship. So just a few questions before we actually read Lewis. His comments, he refers to Ephesians 5 when he talks about headship. But we might want to ask, what do we think headship means? What does it entail? Does it mean that the head of the family is the boss, the dictator? Or does it mean that he is the responsible one, the accountable one? What should headship produce in family life? So I thought to read more than just, he refers to Ephesians 5:25, but I thought it might be good to read all Paul's comments here in Ephesians 5 verses 22 to 33 and have that in mind when we hear out C.S. Lewis's comments about headship in the family. Alright, Ephesians 5 verses 22 to 33. Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without sin, or without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated his own body, but he feeds and cares for it, just as Christ does the church. For we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. This counsel doesn't always go over well today. And now we'll hear the way Lewis addresses this subject. In verse, on page 121, he talks about the husband is the head of the wife, just insofar as he is to her what Christ is to the church. He is to love her as Christ loved the church. Read on. And gave his life for her. Ephesians 5 verse 25. This headship, then, is most fully embodied not in the husband we should all wish to be, but in him whose marriage is most like a crucifixion, whose wife receives most and gives least, is most unworthy of him, is, in her own mere nature, least lovable. For the church has no beauty but what the bridegroom gives her. He does not find, but makes her lovely. The chrism of this terrible coronation is to be seen not in the joys of any man's marriage, but in its sorrows, in the sicknesses, in the sickness and sufferings of a good wife, or the faults of a bad one, in his unwearying, never paraded, care, or his inexhaustible forgiveness. Forgiveness, not acquiescence. As Christ sees in the flawed, proud, fanatical, or lukewarm church on earth that bride who will one day be without spot or wrinkle, and labors to produce the latter, so the husband whose headship is Christ-like, and he is allowed no other sort, never despairs. So I think what he's saying here is that the model for the husband is Christ. So the more he is like Christ, the more responsible he is for his wife's spiritual well-being. That is where he is being like Christ, and that is what he's supposed to be doing. He also makes one other little point here that I thought was interesting at the end. Lewis was a scholar in literature, so he's referring to a literary example of the crowning. He says, "The sternest feminist need not grudge my sex the crown offered to it, either in the pagan or in the Christian mystery. For the one is of paper and the other of thorns. The real danger is not that husbands may grasp the latter too eagerly, but they will allow or compel their wives to usurp it." If Christ is the model for the husband as to how he should be the head in his family, I don't think any woman would complain if her husband was trying to do that. It's not that he will achieve it, but that is the assignment or the role that is placed on the husband. He is given the responsibility of being accountable for the well-being of his wife spiritually and of his children spiritually. It's primarily on his head how he does, how he follows this model. Do we, as wives or as children, help or hinder the head of the home to accomplish that, to work towards that? The closer each of us obeys the roles we're given, the better the fruit and happiness in a family life. What are the characteristics that are encouraged for men and women in the church? You have examples given in 1 Timothy not just for husbands, but for men, basically. It says, "The overseer must be above reproach, the husband of but one wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him with proper respect. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? He must also have a good reputation with outsiders." When it speaks of deacons, it says they are to be worthy of respect, sincere, not indulging in much wine, and not pursuing dishonest gain. So, I mean, if our husbands are trying to be like that, have those characteristics, I don't think anybody would be complaining. Women, what is expected of women? It says their wives are to be women worthy of respect, not malicious talkers, but temperate and trustworthy in everything. The same expectations of a good character are expected of the husband and the wife. And it's the model for their children, how they are going to grow up to be. I'm going to link to a video called "Do JWs View Marriage as Divine Covenant Binding for Life as the Bible teaches. And that was based on a video that I did from another of Lewis's books, Mere Christianity. And the second one is Eve followed her eyes and desires. Adam followed his wife. Both evidence of no gratitude, no faith. And that was based on a video we did on Genesis chapter 3, verses 6 to 8 in the Adam and Eve story.